and welcome to the Integration Station. I'm your host, Michael, a child and adolescent occupational therapist, and with me today is my co-host, Eleanor.
Also a child and adolescent occupational therapist.
How you going?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, week's been all right.
Yeah, definitely. Good start.
Excellent.
Fun times on the weekend.
Yeah. Good weekend for all, which is nice. I don't want to bring the tone down, but they're pet peeves. I did. There was just one thing that someone mentioned to me the other day, and I didn't want to get to it, and maybe we'll do a bit of a segment on it later. But it's about when people mention about what you do must be so rewarding, and I get it, but just one thing that
got some thoughts around it.
Yeah, just have some thoughts around it.
All right, that sounds good.
Thank you for getting my words out.
I brought my list from the other day too of things I also have thoughts around, so we can add it to the list. Last
time you did mention a few things, so
yeah, you just got me thinking.
But always, if anybody else has any pet peeves or things they wanted to add to the list, any questions that they have, we have our email, and we have a question that came through on the email, and our email address is podcast@OTFC Group. Otherwise, we have Instagram, OTFC Group's the handle, or TikTok. You can submit questions. And before we start all of that, I reckon we might start with our regular segments.
Absolutely. And if you're listening for the first time, or just as a refresher, we do normally have a Q&A format. So like you said, you can send in questions and we'll do the best to unpack that and try and find the fun in learning to support the young people in our lives.
Okay.
Therapy, activity of the week.
I had one that I was doing yesterday.
Yeah.
Which, it's not, you could do it with anything really. Doesn't matter. You don't need a whole bunch of equipment for, but I had one of my social groups that I run, 6 boys, and I don't think they were prepared for it, but it was a activity in teamwork. So at the Mile End space, we have the big gym, the big plus park space, and there's a stairwell that goes up to the balcony that overlooks the gym.
Yeah.
So what I did was I had a couple of tunnels at the bottom floor in the park, and then 3 teams of 2.
Yeah.
And they all had to get 10 foam blocks. So take 10 foam blocks from the tunnel, and one person was at the bottom and the other person was at the top. So one person had to take 1 foam block at a time up the stairs to the thrower, and the thrower had to throw a foam block into one of the 2 tunnels.
Okay.
And so there was 3 teams competing against each other.
Yeah.
And the aim was to try and first identify who was going to be the thrower and who was going to be the runner, but I didn't tell them what the tasks were.
Okay.
So I just said one person has to throw and one person has to be the collector.
Gotcha.
Right? And so invariably what happens is the person that likes the sound of the collector goes, I'll collect. And 9 times out of 10, they're the ones that are not as fast and don't have the aerobic capacity.
Gotcha.
and it was interesting. And I said, okay, collectors, your job is to get from the foam pit, go up the stairs, give it to the person at the top, come back down the stairs, get the next block, 1 block at a time, and the side, the groan from the collectors, right? But I said, but you're a team, so at any stage you communicate how you're going to do it, or if you need to swap over, that there's whatever you need to do, but you need to you've selected that, you have to stay as that team at the start.
Okay.
Right. And it was great. They actually took to it really well, and it was very tight. I think one team won 10, the other one got 9, and the other one got 4, but it was very close throughout. But it was really encouraging to see the communication that was happening, and there was no, you missed, or come on, be faster. There was so much encouragement, much like, you're doing a great job, keep running. And
that's awesome.
And at the end, they were stuffed.
I bet.
But so regulated as well.
That's so good.
And it was so interesting. One of the guys normally drives, his mum comes with him. And I said, you going to drive home, mate? And he's like, I don't think so. I'm like, you know your capacity. Yeah. You be sensible. If you don't think you can drive, he's like, I'm not going to drive. I'm like, wow, that really took it out of him. Yeah. And I said, I said to them, you know why I did that? And one of them was like, to get us to exercise more. I'm like, pretty much. And I said that to one of the dads after the group, and he's like, great. A lot of the guys in the group aren't, now they finished school. Yeah. A lot of them aren't engaged in physical activity much. And it's all well and good to, some people like going to the gym or play sports. None of these guys do that. None of the guys have the confidence to go to the gym. They have the motivation. They're not sporting
interested
people.
In other things.
Right.
Yeah.
But to do this, none of them complained whilst they were doing it. They're all motivated because they wanted to help their teammate and they were having fun. And yes, they were pretty tired at the end, but it was a nice way to see, how far as a group they've come as a collective, but also in teams, and they selected their own teams.
I was just about to ask how they picked the teams.
Yeah, it was very natural. I want to go with you, and you. Yep, great,
cool.
And everyone was quite happy with that. And I just enjoyed sitting back watching it, and I didn't really have to do anything but collect foam blocks and put them back in place for them to just keep running, and they just navigated themselves.
Yeah. And
so it was good.
I just think, I know with a lot of these guys, I've been working with them for a long time, and it's a very safe place, not only in the physical environment, but in terms of the relationships and that trust. So even doing an activity like that, if they had gone somewhere else for the first time, or it was with different people, and someone threw that out there, that would have looked completely different. But because they know when they come to hang out with you, you've got those best interests and you're there to look out for them.
Yeah.
Makes it a bit easier to get involved with.
Yeah, and when I admit that I just want them to exercise more, they're like, okay, yeah, Michael just wants us to exercise, that's fine.
So fair.
Yeah. How about yourself?
I had a good one this week as well, actually. I was doing an activity with one of my friends, which I ended up doing a lot of running around in, but got really into it and had a good laugh along the way. But at the Parkside therapy space, we've got this suspended surfboard that's there all of the time. So a great piece of equipment that we can use to support balance and, using your core to maintain those postures. But I did reflect, that worked really well for us in this environment, but you could use that with so many other things in other environments, whether you're on a swing, on a Bosu ball, standing on a balance board, whatever it is. But there was a couple of elements in there. So we were saying that he's on his ship. We had other ships set up on the floor around it with different pieces of equipment and skittles on it. So they were the minions trying to attack his ship. And I had scattered a bunch of beanbags around the base of the surfboard. So he had to balance on the board to collect the beanbags, trying to shoot at the ships with the minions on it. He also had a baseball bat. And my job in this game, I had a dodgeball, and I would just run around the surfboard and try and launch attacks at his ship for him to hit away with the bat. So he's trying to clock where I am because I'm just circling around, collecting the ball, throwing from all different directions. So I'm constantly getting him to change his body position and where he's facing and having to think and move. And he's trying to work really quickly in between when I'm chasing the ball to pick up beanbags without falling off the surfboard, get a couple of throws in, whilst also visually monitoring me. So there's a lot of elements going on there. And the first round, because we're still building our confidence, I guess, in sort of processing that input and in our balance skills too. So the first one, he started standing up, but he ended up kind of sitting down and feeling more comfortable like that. But we played a second round where I'm like, nah, let's see if we can do it standing up the whole time. And he's just such a trooper and always so willing to give something a go, even though it's tricky. And we just had a ball. It was really fun. So lots of therapeutic elements there, but I think just being able to lean into the play themes and build that out from what he was suggesting. And I actually had come into that session with an idea about what I wanted to do. And he said he wanted to use the surfboard, and he had found the baseball bat, and he's kind of just twirling that around. And I just thought, I'm just going to follow this and see what I can weave in. So it was pretty cool. We started doing a baseball dodgeball game just on the trampoline. And I was like, nah, this is too easy for you. Like, where do you think we should go next? And sort of carried that game somewhere else that he's less comfortable with. And then just using things that he enjoyed to then build that out even further. And we got to a really cool place.
Yeah, great spot.
Yeah.
It's kind of like trying to play soccer or some sort of sport, and you trying to dish off passes to someone else in your teammate, and there's all these other people coming towards you, and you're having to navigate a whole bunch of things around you, just the spatial awareness and then the planning required to execute a throw.
Absolutely.
and to have to change from a throw to a hit. And lots of complex things in there.
Yes.
But it would look I would imagine someone watching it would look like you're just playing, like you're just hitting a ball or throwing things.
Yep.
But when you break it down, there's a lot of complexity in the tasks that are involved and having to generalize skills from one to another. And
definitely. when I'm thinking back his goals that had come through when he had done his evaluation in air sensory integration, his goals are all around that vestibular-based processing. So we're working on things like balance, postural control, using both sides of the body. So with that game, that's just all
ticking the
boxes through there. And then he's also got goals around his visual motor integration to be able to use his eyes and his hands together. And so adding on all those throwing and catching elements and the dodgeball to hit away as well just brought those all in. But I think doing it in a way that's very child-led and playful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not just like, okay, if there's some balance components that need some work, we're just balancing on a gym ball, or if there's some midline bilateral skills, not just crossing the midline, passing one thing from one hand to another, really basic sort of like, rudimentary, 101 style activities.
Definitely.
It's like, well, why don't we do this through play and you get genuine engagement?
And just very dynamic, and just naturally I'd intend to throw the ball so that when he hit it with the bat, he is crossing his arms over his body, and in having to constantly change his position to gather bean bags, or even if he's thrown off balance when he's moving, I'm getting those core muscles to switch on a little bit more automatically, and he's having to process that movement. So he always works so hard. He's such a legend. Yeah, I said at the end, I'm like, oh man, this is so much fun.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Regulation, the strategy of the week.
Okay, so Reg Strat, what do you got this week?
I had a cool conversation with one of my friends actually around our feelings volcano, which I don't know if you use that as much in the plus space with teenagers and young adults, but I still have found myself carrying that.
Tell me.
That over, yeah. So I guess for the young person that I was working with, supporting her emotional regulation and being able to label what those feelings look like is a big goal for her. And what can typically happen, I think, is in the moment she's working really hard and then something else can happen that's unexpected, or a change in plan, or didn't go as she anticipated, and she can be a little bit more responsive in that moment in terms of the emotions that come through. And so as a result, she can be a bit up and down in terms of how she's interacting with others and what those emotions can look like. And seemingly it comes out of the blue sometimes when she's managed so much and so well across the day, and then something happens when she's with her brothers or with her family. And I guess the way I always introduce the feelings volcano as a tool to recognize how we feel across our day is I'll talk about myself and what my volcano looks like, and pitch it in a way I think so often that the friends I'm sharing this with will go, oh yeah, me too. Oh yeah, that happens to me. And it just, I suppose, makes it quite safe to unpack that. And I had told her I've been thinking of her, and this is something that really helps me, and had brought it to our session to show her, and we ended up making a visual together around it, which was really cool. But it's just a way that a young person can recognize that actually sometimes our emotional responses in the moment aren't just about what's happening then and there. It's a combination of the things that have happened across the day, across the week, and those things can build over time, almost like lava levels in a volcano. And when these little things happen, or big things, the lava levels build to varying degrees in our body, and then something happens and then everything spills out. And I always say to my friends when I'm sharing it, like for me with my volcano, I can coast kind of halfway up or towards the top for a really long time, and then something happens and everything spills out. But for other people I know, it can come, and my poor brother, I always throw him under, not under the bus, but I use him. I'm like, oh, my brother, his looks like this, which is, I don't even think necessarily true to a degree, but nice to have the comparison that things look different. I'll say for him, his can come up and down across the day, but resets quite quickly, whereas mine takes more time. And then they can kind of go from there going, oh, I think I'm a bit more like you, or no, I'm a bit more like your brother, and I can get angry and frustrated really quickly. And then we end up talking about, well, what are some of the things that make our lava levels come up? What are some of the things that help us reset? And then the idea being is that we're not waiting till the very top of our volcano before we're starting to implement these things, that we're, well, what does it feel like when our lava levels are part way up the volcano? I'm not happy, I'm not sad, but I'm feeling unsure. Something feels off. And maybe as I creep up a bit further, I might snap a little bit more or get a bit more frustrated. But at the very top, I'm teary, angry, distressed, frustrated at a more intense level. And it's just, a really cool tool to talk that all through. And we end up having a great chat about it. And actually I shot her an email afterwards just explaining a bit like, well, this is what my morning had looked like, and actually just being able to share with you how I was feeling has helped me reset, and I feel so much better going into my day now. And I think, just modelling that for her, but validating how helpful I found it too. Yeah. That's the feelings volcano.
Yeah, good. I guess there are similarities to that with other strategies that we do use with some of the older clients, and similar approaches. Maybe the volcano analogy is not used as much as, I don't know.
It's like a spoon theory and stuff like that too, which I guess is a similar
stuff,
concept.
How many spoons, you have and how much, or when you talked about some of the, the PDA, the demand, the number of lives you have and those sort of things. And even, our approach with just that level of arousal and how your arousal can change and fluctuate throughout the day, and that window of tolerance or that, the optimal band of arousal, those sort of things certainly tie in all to that concept as well.
Yeah.
One thing I had been overhearing, and you've talked about it before in a previous podcast, was the guard dog and wise owl.
Yeah.
And it was not actually me, it was actually my wife talking to my son about some transition stuff and some things he was going through, and use that, hey, that's Miggy trying to trick your brain.
Yeah.
And,
that's from the Hey Warrior
correct.
book too, Karen Young.
Yeah. And using that to help regulate and support an understanding of what's going on in the brain for him, and to start using those words to help him self-regulate what's actually, like, what emotions are happening.
Definitely.
And what's going on.
Definitely.
And it was a good reflection about, as a self-regulation, as a regulation tool, regulation strategy. It's, I don't think you're ever too young to introduce some of these concepts.
No.
Depending on the child and their capacity, but never too young to introduce some of these concepts, as long as it's done in the right way.
Yeah.
To help children understand what's going on for them.
Yeah. I think the evidence shows the earlier you can support that understanding of what's happening at the level of the brain, the better that emotional awareness and literacy can look. So I think you're right, but it's just pitching it at a level that is comfortable for them. And maybe for some of the younger ones, it's starting off with you're just referencing and labeling things for yourself so that they're seeing that over time. And then when it feels ready to go, well, let me tell you a little bit more about what I'm referring to here, and, I'm wondering what that looks like for you.
Very true.
Yeah.
We finished with our regular segments?
We have finished with our regular segments complete.
Get on to my pet peeves now?
Yeah, you've been hanging out for that, haven't you? We're not here to talk about wonky Tim Tams, though.
No.
We're here to talk about...
I had a Tim Tam the other day.
Did you? What flavour?
Just normal one.
Okay. No nonsense.
Good. Yeah, it was all right.
Was it straight enough for you?
I was actually not even... I just wanted something sweet, so...
Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad that you could look past that to enjoy a Tim Tam like the rest of us.
Correct. Well, unlike Tim Tams, other pet peeves that I might have. Now, I think I mentioned before, it's not so much a pet peeve because I know the intent, but sometimes I feel like when someone says to me, when I talk about my job, when I do say, oh, that must be so rewarding.
Yeah.
And
you're like, how dare they?
Not how, no. I've never, no, I don't want to. Yeah,
no,
anyway.
I'm only teasing.
But like, I don't want it to be taken as the job isn't rewarding. Of course it is. But I've never thought of it in that perspective. I guess the way I've always thought is that, I got into the job like a lot of other OTs because we wanted to find a way to support people who are needing support.
Yeah.
And there was never this intent about I'm doing something for self-gratification or something that's rewarding. It was just, this seemed like a career or profession that just fit maybe my personality type or the type of work that I like doing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I mean, sometimes when it's said, and maybe this is probably, the more I'm talking about it, the more it sounds like it's more of a me problem than someone else.
No, I get where you're coming from. I do.
Sometimes it comes across as a good on you. When someone says good on you, you do you sort of thing. Like good on you, that's good for you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you mean that? Like what is the intent of it? That must be so rewarding when someone says that. Are they saying that you are doing something that's rewarding or fulfilling? That's not something I could do, or good on you for doing that job. Not everyone could do that job.
Yeah.
Like I just, what's the intent behind that?
Yeah, I get that. And I can hear it from your perspective where, I think if you're getting into OT for you, and what you're going to get out of it, that's probably that's going to be a bit tricky. And I think about, what they must be referring to when you're like, that's so rewarding. That implies that, well, I'm doing this so that I'm feeling good from that. But I guess when I'm celebrating things from my day, I'm like, man, that was so awesome. This little person did something that they couldn't do before, and I've watched that happen. Or, hey, we were really able to work together to advocate for them at school, or put some really good things at place, or we chatted some things through. Anyway, that's like, list could go on, but I'm not celebrating, man, I played such a key role in that. It's more where that feeling comes from is celebrating that win or that progress or that journey for other people.
Yeah.
And do you think perhaps when they say rewarding, maybe that comes from them because, I don't know, it looks a little bit different in what their job role looks like, and so making that comparison, I'm not too sure. Yeah.
I without asking them directly, what do you mean by that when you say it must be so rewarding?
Yeah.
And I could maybe ask that next time.
Maybe you should.
Could be a social faux pas to ask that, but yeah, I guess when I hear that, it just bristles a little bit.
Okay.
That's all.
Oh, it bristles a little bit.
Yeah.
I like that. I can see it on your face. The bristling. But I get it. I actually do completely get where you're coming from with that.
But I'm not the only one with pet peeves.
No, I brought some of my pet peeves with me. I have a bit of a list, and I was saying to you before that I guess I'm coming at this mostly from the perspective of a therapist, whereas I guess you'll be able to put those hats on differently as a parent as well. But it really did, I've had a few like this across the weeks where we talked about, well, what does it mean when we say that someone's lazy? Or what does it mean when we say we're just building rapport? And I've had, yes, a few other ones like that I've just ended up in a similar train of thought about, what does that even mean? And what am I trying to achieve with that? So maybe one I'll start off with as an example, and it's probably for me come from sort of supporting a lot of our new staff in having them and their friends access the space in a way that's really safe and adhering to work health and safety principles and meeting the client where they're at and where their capabilities are. But I almost never find myself saying to a client in session, that's unsafe, as a means to caution them about what's happening in their environment. And so I think it's a really important to be able to label that as you need to. But I guess for me, I find the way it comes out is more in educating what's happening. So if a client ever says to me, oh, can we do this? I'm always like, thank you so much for asking. I'm just going to check in with, for example, my OT rules are here. These are some of the things I need to think about in an activity. What do you think is what you're asking? Does it fit within that? Can we problem solve it together? And quite often they'll go, oh, no, I really wanted to be up super high, but I can see that that's something that you have to be mindful of. And it's like planting the seed. So then I'm going, you know what, you're so right. I actually totally get where you're coming from. So what can we do differently? Even I saw a little person the other day for their first session, and understandably coming to meet a new person and a degree of anxiousness they were managing, I kind of set up a bit of a game. I was playing it, wasn't talking to him too much, and he kind of whispered to Mum, I want to have a go, but I don't want her to be in the room. And I didn't say back to him, well, I have to be in the room. It's not safe if I'm not in here. I just was that, thank you so much. I just need to let you know, part of my rules is that I'm on standby, and if I'm out of the room, I can't do that. So how can we have that look a little bit different? And funnily enough, I feel like I've taken him on a tour of our work health and safety procedures each week, because every week he'll ask me a question. I'm like, oh, so funny that you ask that. This is something that I'm thinking about when we're together to make sure that we're all safe. But very rarely am I like, we can't do that. That's not safe. And I just wanted to get your thoughts around that. I feel like maybe I know it probably sounds like I'm using a lot of words to achieve the same thing, but even if I'm thinking, I'm not doing this, say, for someone who is non-speaking or has, other non-verbal means that they would communicate. I'm not going to them, oh, hey, let me talk it through, let's workshop it together. I'm just actually probably for those ones, I'm stepping in to help guide them away or redirect them or use my body to help them move on to something else. So yeah, I feel like no matter what that presentation is, I'm very rarely, it's always in my back pocket if I really need it, but I'm not going, oh, that's not safe.
I always think about what's the intent? What are you trying to achieve? And if you're trying to get someone to stop doing something, then what you want them to do is something else, correct?
Yeah.
So you want them to respond in a different way.
Yeah.
Probably the one time I'd say that's unsafe or stop is like if they're about to run onto a road.
Totally.
Or it's like immediate danger, like, you know, there's no point. Oh, maybe if you held my hand now, that sort of thing. Like it's not
absolutely.
safe to. So in those sort of situations, I would be having less conversation.
Yes, and sorry, I suppose I'm not really talking about
like that's what I mean.
immediate danger here.
Correct, and I guess that's where I'm thinking. That's where I would probably be spending more time focusing on the what's safe and what's not safe.
Yeah.
But yeah, in a therapy space, I'm probably similar to you. I would be spending less time outlaying. Don't do this, don't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Because you get a lot of roadblocks.
Yeah.
And then more time, you know, as you said, going through, well, these are our work health and safety principles. How can we do what we can do within these parameters? And invariably, you're going to get a lot of those kids going, oh, well, how can I navigate this to my needs? And you go, okay, does that work? Well, can we do it together?
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems safe.
Yeah.
Or that seems, fair. And that's within the protocol and we've adapted it, or how can we make it safer?
Yeah, definitely.
And it also, I mean, I guess it's, you know, the whole point of it is trying to, and I say this before, I've said this before, and I say this to you know, a lot of families is if you are telling someone to stop doing something or you don't want them to respond in a particular way, or there's behavior, or say if it's a sensory thing, they're always biting something, you don't want them to bite something, or they're always, you know, grabbing something, you don't want them to grab that. If you tell them to stop doing that, then you're only, you know, you're only solving half the challenge there. You got to have a way to replace it with something else.
Yeah.
And so if you say that's unsafe, then they go, okay, tell me what's safe.
Totally.
And how do I get what I need and make it safe?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, you've always talked about low demand and trying to work with a person or a client to navigate things. And I think it's a good example of it. So, yeah, I have questions about using the word unsafe. But also the other one, I think, is things like no.
Yeah, that's definitely on my list as well. And when I think about for some young people how these sorts of phrases become trigger words where it's no, don't stop, can't. I just been thinking the other day when we're using words like that, but it's not followed up, like you said, with something else, then are we even being clear in the messaging that, you know, I guess I had been reflecting about my little nephew who's 2.5, and for a little person like that who's still developing their language, if they're doing something and they're playing and they're engaging and they're still learning about the world and what's expected and what's safe ways to interact with that, if you're just enforcing no consistently, then like what does that even mean? If you just, because you hear the word no all of the time, and it doesn't matter what we're doing. Obviously, they learn it's don't do that. But I was thinking when you are developing that language, like, but what does that then help us show to the next point? And so, and I think I can hear how that would become a trigger if it's something that we're hearing all of the time, but then we're still learning what to do with our body in that situation and we don't know what the next step is. And that would be very heightening. I think about even, I suppose, tying in the 2 points about unsafe and no, he's such a beautiful young boy he's so switched on non-speaking. And when I first started working with him, it been shared that sometimes he can become really heightened if he does hear no or unsafe. And so I'm like, okay, so how can I best support him in this environment without using those words? But I actually don't find I ever need to use them because I set up the environment in a way that he can access it safely. And he's just, you know, he loves moving and big movement and being up high and all of those sorts of things. And so if the opportunity presents and he does do that, I'm more going, well, okay, that's just going to help him. I'm lucky that I can support him in the moment. And then next time I go, okay, well, I got to make sure that I don't have the room set up that way because that's actually on me because he doesn't know how to help that. And he wouldn't understand if I was stepping in to say why he can't be up there, why some things are allowed, why some things aren't allowed. And so I'm going, okay, well, next time I'm going to have all of the tunnels down so that he's not climbing that at times when I can't safely support him, or just trying to shift what his access looks like. And anytime I do find myself in a situation, I'm always like, that is on me. And knowing what some of your needs look like, I could have set this up a bit better for you. And so then we actually haven't had those tricky times. We've been doing different things. And I think he's feeling safer as a result. And I'm seeing it looked like that a lot at the start. And now I'm seeing a lot less of that, I think, because he knows when I'm stepping into his space, I'm there to help rather than stop him from doing the things he wants to do. Yeah.
I think you were saying before from maybe what my view is from a parent perspective.
Yeah.
I think from a parent perspective at times, the intent is to try and reduce using those words or to try and engage in conversation or to try and negotiate and to manage and to support and to work with rather than, be, imperative as opposed to that sort of more declarative sort of observational supportive way. But at times everybody has a capacity and everybody has limit, and the amount of times you have noticed that, it gets quite draining and it gets quite tiring, particularly if you've got a young person or young people that are continually trying to find ways to navigate their world or push boundaries as they're entitled to do, and you're having to maintain
all the time
safety
totally
net. So I can certainly understand why these words come up and how they're used, and I would also say that sometimes it's not, if you are saying no, stop, don't, that's unsafe, that's not a problem.
No.
It's not you should be chastised for using those words.
No, not at all.
But it's also good to reflect on, can I set up an environment a different way? And I think that's the thing for, when you're in a home environment or if you're going out or something or, doing something family outing, for a lot of these young people, it's a lot about preparation.
Yeah.
You just have to spend more time preparing everything than sometimes the event itself.
Totally, yeah.
And so all that brain power and everything you do to get it prepared to make it successful, including how you use your words, can take a lot of effort. And sometimes I just don't have the effort today.
And I probably should have prefaced everything that I'm saying by noting that everything you're saying, I completely get that and respect that and understand. And sometimes, I'm chatting through things with parents and they're like, we understand, but that is so exhausting sometimes.
Yeah,
I'm like,
is.
I can only imagine how exhausting that would be. And I suppose even if it's taking a few opportunities to shift that so that when we do use these words, they have the impact that we need it to.
Correct.
That it's not getting watered down maybe across the day. And I think you're exactly right when we're talking about supporting some of the young people that we work with their varying needs and their fluctuating capacity and the anxiousness that more often than not, most of the behaviours that we might be using these words around are really tricky and they need a lot of help with that. So I certainly want to acknowledge that as well, not diminish. I hope I haven't unintentionally diminished that experience.
I don't think you have, and I think it's just providing that other perspective.
Yeah.
For any parent that's listening out here to go, I sometimes use those words, and I would admit, I think I said this morning to my son, stop doing that, or don't, or you're not going to go and see this person today because of this. And I'm like, why did I put a thread in? Because that's all I had in that moment. I needed to get a direction across, and you're right. Sometimes when you have time, it's like don't practice doing shoelaces 5 minutes before you have to leave.
Yeah,
practice doing it when you've got time.
Set
it up for success. And sometimes you don't have that, and I get that. It's not as if every single time we need to be focusing on these things.
Yeah.
But I do firmly believe that the more that someone hears no, stop, can't, all those words, then that. The more we know from research in child mental health is the first 5 years are critical. A child hears those things, they automatically start to portray a picture of themselves that is a negative picture of themselves, that I can't do that, or no, you should stop doing that, or your ideas aren't good.
Yeah.
Or you are an unsafe child.
Yeah.
And they're not. They're an exploring child who's trying to navigate their world, and they need direction, they need support. And so it's really important to, if you can, use language that is positive.
Yeah.
Or as you said, to redirect to work with that person together. And even those that, are non-speaking, you can use visuals, you can use prompts, you can physically guide them, support them through a task to make it safe.
Yeah.
And there are ways to manage that. So I mean, I can understand why they're pet peeves, particularly from a therapist perspective.
Yes. Almost think, when I'm coming at it from a therapist perspective, I think feeling like you're constantly saying no or that's not safe, that must feel a bit draining as well. And like you're not getting where you need to.
Yep.
with that? And is that actually, if it is feeling like that, to go, okay, there is an opportunity here for me that I could be doing something differently, that I could be supporting this in a different way. And it's actually not about the friend that you're working with and getting them to do something different. It's, well, how can I change what I'm doing? What's my part to play here?
And I think this comes back to, we've talked about, Neurodiversity Week earlier in the year. We had those podcast series, but like comes back to that double empathy problem.
Yeah.
Where particularly for a neurodivergent person, and sometimes it's not, sometimes it's, neurotypical young children who are just exploring their world. And we have to understand children at that age are going to push boundaries.
Definitely.
Toddlers are going to explore. They're going to do stuff. And you have to have a level of how much can I manage today?
Yeah.
But if they're a neurodivergent young person, then they have a perspective in their mind of what is okay and what they think is safe. And if you're saying, no, that's not safe, and then they think, hang on.
But why not?
Justify that, please.
Yeah.
You've got to find the middle ground.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think with the little person I was referencing before, I am quite aware of just with him being a bit younger in the way that he does like to explore his environment, I think what people's tool would often be, and I also prefacing all these conversations, I know everyone is just doing the very, very best that they can with the tools that they have, the capacity that they have, and that fluctuates from day to day. But thinking of this little person, I think people often come into his space to then maybe help physically move him away. And so what I've been trying to do is when I come in, I'm actually going to try not to come into your space too much. I'm going to hold it at a realm that you feel comfortable. I'm going to really celebrate moments where you bring me in or come into mine. Or if I am going to be in your space, I'm there to facilitate. I'm there to help you.
Positive.
I'm there to and so I'm seeing that shift a lot where sometimes he used to play games and he'd literally pick it up and move away from me. And I'm like, I just need him to know that I'm here with him. And so now we can do things. It's more parallel, but some interactions. And like for me, that's really positive steps.
Very much.
Because he hasn't been like, well, it's just not another person that's coming into my space and taking away things because it doesn't look how someone else might expect it to. Yeah.
It kind of ties into if we can go into one of the questions we got that came in. I really wanted to get through this question because when you talk about people coming to space and things like transitions and doing things, this question that came through from an OT, which was looking for support and recommendations or strategies from my friend who's had a hard time with transitions at ABA clinic school. I'm an OT and I have this one client in particular that is diagnosed with autism and she's had a hard time with transitions. We participate in activities, but when it is time to leave the OT room, she will drop to the floor and start crying. We have used visual schedules first and then, and sometimes sitting works and sometimes it doesn't. Lately, I've been taking the approach of decreasing the demand where I'm doing proprioceptive input through pillow squashes before the transition, but we still drop to the floor when we tell her it's time to go. Something that has helped a little is setting expectations when transitioning. Is let's just sit on the pillow and we can wait it out a bit more, so for safety instead of laying on the floor. The last session she was able to sit but has those big emotions and also having an ABA therapist in the room who will verbally cue her a lot for transitions to leave, which I think can be overwhelming. Looking for some insight to help support this friend and also verbalise the team of how we can support her.
Yeah.
Long question, good question.
Really good question. Really good question. I think there's already some really good things in place here that's been trialled around visual schedules versus this and that, because what I'm hearing is for this young person, we're trying to bring in some visual elements to help her understand what the structure is going to look like, create a little bit more predictability, because so often, I guess when we're hearing something like this, I can probably hear they're quite anxious in moving from something we're really enjoying doing to something that looks a little bit different, or just moving away from something we love is really hard, or just transitions in general increase those levels of anxiousness. So trying to make that feel more predictable so that we're all on the same page, I think are really good places to start, really good things to have in the toolbox.
Every time I think of transitions, I think of what happens in the brain when we're going from something we like to something that we don't like, or we're going from one thing to the next. And particularly for for neurodivergent young people, the brain is so flooded and overwhelmed, and there's so much unpredictability. And I remember someone showing me a visual of like all these spikes or these different parts of the brain as soon as you tell someone it's time to finish or transition, that these brain like spikes just go over. I can't remember where I saw it. Anyway, it was a visual, and it just gave me this really clear picture of the brain is just
Wow.
like a hedgehog.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm bristled.
Yeah.
Like bristling, right? At that suggestion of I have to stop what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And I have to agree. There are a lot of really nice strategies in here. You know, talked about proprioceptive input, trying to use regulation tools to help that transition, trying to use visuals, trying to have support from someone else. And what I can hear here is that, you know, another person trying to assist with that transition can help, but it can also be a challenge to go, this person is cueing me to leave the room.
Yes.
I don't want to leave.
Yeah.
That's two people telling me something I don't want to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit
And
here.
I've got no control here
control.
now, and that's so overwhelming. Yeah.
So what I mean, one of my favorite things, I don't know if you still do this, but I remember when some of when I was working more with the little ones was, you know, shoes and socks time. As soon as they hear shoes and socks, boom, go hide on a trampoline, run into a foam pit. That is the trigger word of time to go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, look, this is great. They stay and they want to be here. Fantastic. But how do we transition them out? And so often one of the first things I would do is often put the shoes and socks just outside the door.
Yeah.
So as a visual prompt, shoes and socks go on outside the door. So for us to leave, they're out there.
Yep.
And we need to get
good.
them on before we leave, obviously.
Yep.
And so that stuff's out there.
Yep.
Or it could even be, you know, you've got your little toy and the toy is going to stay out there with your shoes and socks. So when we finish, you can go to that toy.
Yep.
And the other thing I always used to practice in sessions was transitioning between two tasks that we really liked.
Yeah.
To go from we're enjoying this, let's transition to something else that we also enjoy. So we're getting used to that transition.
Yeah.
So practicing transitions, just like riding a bike.
Yeah.
Can we
It's a
practice
skill.
transition?
Yeah,
you know?
that makes
So,
sense.
I mean, that were just a couple of things that I often use, but
Yeah. And I get that sometimes it's about trying different things to see what works. And I think importantly, if you try something and it doesn't work one week, doesn't mean you should throw it out the window the next week. Because if something's unpredictable and we're throwing in when transition's already hard, and then each week we're trying something different, then that further increases the unpredictability, doesn't it? And even as a flip of that with the shoes and socks, I really like that about the visual. I had also heard from someone else previously that they used to always put shoes and socks on before doing the last game. So it's also managed before then moving out of the space and using something like, you know, for all our little friends here, we offer them a sticker. So if they, you know, then they know the drill. It's when it's time to finish, it's shoes and socks, we come and find a sticker and you can get into a really good rhythm with that. I'm working with a little friend at the moment actually who that's been something we're really actively working towards. And I'm trying to do things, thinking about the types of activities that we're doing so that we're not doing something really big, really fun, and then being like, anyway, it's time to go, and then have him transition out there. So trying to do something a little bit slower is the final activity. And I'm also trying to do things about providing warning, but I'm not saying it to him, I'm saying it to the room, or I'm saying it to his mum, where I'll go, oh, I can see we've got 10 minutes left. And because his mum's so involved in the sessions, actually, I'll often say to her, be like, oh, Mum, I'm just letting you know, I know you're really loving this game, but we've got probably about 10 more minutes. So I'm just saying things out loud to the room rather than directly to that young person. So they're hearing it and they know what's kind of coming from there, and then trying to help. And then when we do say it's time to go, he often wants to make things like into a bit of a game. But then I had just seen earlier that like sometimes that can be really helpful. It's like, oh, who can, you know, do you think you can put your shoes and socks on before I pack up? Who's going to get out the door the fastest, and making it really playful? Or, hey, I've got the scooter board. Do you think I can give you a ride out of the room and to the door? But then for him, he's then always looking to add in extra elements to the play theme. So it's like, okay, I can see that that's probably going to be helpful sometimes, but not all the time. So what I probably actually want to do for him is make that super consistent. And when we say it's time to go, Mum and I have been putting our socks and shoes on, and then I'll go, that's okay, I'm just going to hold the door. And so I just move my body to the door, and I'm not saying a lot at that point in time. And he might often be saying that he's not ready to leave and things like that. But then we're just quietly holding the space. And then I think because he's then has the understanding of, okay, so when we say it's time to go, it's time to go, and then we can move out together from there, and that's been working well. But I think probably the biggest thing I've been doing is not introducing pressure into the situation. So I'm actually giving us lots of extra time, knowing that we might need 10 more minutes to move out of the room.
Yeah.
So I start the process early. So I think about this young person who gets really upset and teary, knowing that it might look like that. You don't want to reach this point of being, hang on now, I said it's time to go, it's time to go. Communicating in that moment that it's feeling like too much. So if there's a way that we can maybe start that a little bit earlier and seeing if that then gives her the space to feel what she needs to. But I would suggest, I think sometimes when we sit in the moment too, that can make things feel bigger, and then all of a sudden we can't move past that. So maybe even giving her the space but still showing you that you're there, trying not to overwhelm her with more words, and just use your body to cue what you need and just bring yourself to the door, put your socks and shoes on, and then just say, I'm here, and when you're ready, we can go together.
Yeah.
And seeing if that maybe helps.
Yeah. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Look, I've raised a lot of good things. And as I said, it sounds like this OT's already got some really good suggestions.
Absolutely.
And maybe it's just about...
And I keep those things too.
Yeah.
Like keep the visual schedule.
Keeping
keep
what you've got,
that,
adding in a few extra things, maybe building in time for transitions, making sure you've got time for transitions, and maybe that becomes your session. Instead of focusing on what activities you're doing, you're going, the focus of the session is to work on a transition. And I've often said, if I'm transitioning out of a session early and that person can transition out successfully and they're sort of looking like they're done at, half an hour, whatever, even if it's an early finish, if they transition out successfully, that's a successful session.
Definitely.
And so I would certainly have that conversation with the family and the other therapists in there to work on that too.
And build the muscle, build the skill.
Yeah.
And I think even thinking about, that's great, that proprioceptive input, is there opportunities to have that pretty consistently across the session.
Sure.
And something too, I think it can be easy to go into a session being like, right, I'm going to do these 3-4 games. But remembering every time you move from one game to another, that's another transition. Come to the clinic, there may be transition out of the car, into the room, between activities, and then you've finally come and it's time to transition out of the room and into the rest of the day. So maybe even thinking about reducing the transitions within the session too can be really helpful. And if you don't need to move on between activities, or you're doing one or two things, knowing that where your main focus is going to be is moving her out of the room, maybe that can be helpful too.
And last thing I'd say on that is you're very strong on the type of language you use in a transition. Sometimes it can come back to how you're actually addressing that transition, what language you're using to say we're finishing up. And you mentioned it before, do I direct it to the room? If someone's saying it's now time to go, we're going to do this, this, and this, then that can come as a an imperative demand and can be quite triggering. So
absolutely.
Lots to consider there, but
Definitely.
hopefully some supportive advice.
Yeah. And I guess what you're trying to do is make it feel more manageable so that when it comes time to that transition at the end, and I think having both therapists in that room be on board with what that approach is going to look like. So take some time to unpack it together beforehand and going, probably like all the other things we've been chatting about, being like, it's not working at the moment what we're doing. So what can we be doing differently for her? How can we get on the same page? And hopefully there's a few things to think about there.
Excellent.
Yeah. I will say if I can just for like, we've had so much exposure to lots of difficulties with transitions, but I think just like you said, you don't always have to use as many words to communicate that. I had one friend once in the session who, now I had unintentionally triggered her earlier with demands that I had placed, and it came time to go, and she just looked me straight in the eye and said, I'm not going. And I just knew in that moment, this is now going to be really hard. So I reflected on what can I do differently next time? I got someone to help me that time. But the next time what I did was I actually prepared a visual for her saying, and I'd learned lots of things that had happened before then about she hadn't slept well that night. She hadn't eaten her breakfast. She'd found it hard to meet the demands of getting ready to come in. So already, thinking about lives in the video game, she was depleted before she even walked in the door, and I just set the final demand, which I don't normally do. But so the next time we had this visual saying, well, this is how I know my body's ready for OT. It's always my choice to come. If I feel like I can leave at this time, then I know I'm good to go. And so then in the session, I never once said it's time to leave. I was just looking at my watch and I go, oh, okay, it's 1:20. I guess that probably gives us 10 more minutes. Never to her to the room. And then when it came to 1:30, I just looked at my watch and have gone, oh, it's 1:30. I'm going to bring myself to the door. I walked to the door, held the door open, and she was still playing and moving. And honestly, in a couple of minutes, she made the choice to come out, and it was our best transition. And we had historically had tricky transitions. And I just thought that just completely changed the way that you can set something up so that you never actually, sometimes you don't even have to say it's time to go, it's time to finish. It's just other ways to set it up. So I'm wondering if that might even help this young person too.
Good advice.
Man, transitions are so hard.
Transitions are hard, but
Yeah,
we're going to have to
I'm really
transition
feeling for
now
everyone here.
because
That's true.
it's been a very
I'm avoiding, I'm delaying, I'm still talking.
A long podcast, but that's okay. So if you do have any questions, please send them through to Podcast OTFC group, and we will try and answer them. We'll try and give as much advice as we can, and yes, otherwise you can send them through to Instagram or TikTok. We've got some handles there, so have a look there. Social media, we also tend to have stuff up on social media, little snippets and stuff, so feel free to have a look at that and pass on any comments, feedback and otherwise, and we'll answer and do as much as we can to support the young people in our lives.
Yeah, sounds good.
And one more shout out for Fletch.
Always.
Hope he's doing well, and
See you all next time.
see you all next time, guys.